Hello. Today I'm going to show you the new Kanban projects in ScrumDo. I'm recording this on a pre-production alpha build, so not everything is working as smoothly as it is in the final product, but I think it's far enough along to give you an idea. Let's get started. So now when you're creating a new project, you'll have the option of selecting the project type. Here I'm going to select Kanban, since that's what we want to show. After creating the project, you'll see your familiar project dashboard, but I'm going to go right into the Kanban board. Initially, you're prompted to select from a board template or copy an existing project. We don't actually have any templates set up in this build, but there'll be lots there. I'm just going to go ahead and start from scratch and show you how to create a board rather. The board editor gives you this nice grid on the right hand side, some instructions on the left, but essentially what you're doing here is you're clicking and dragging in the grid to draw cells that cards can go into and to draw headers that kind of define groups of cells. So I'm going to go ahead and make a pretend project here that has two different kinds of work. It has new features that go through 3 different phases of doing, reviewing, and done. And then it has bug fixes, which go through 4 phases. It goes through reproducing, doing, verifying, and done. But before I do any of that, when I have a Kanban board like this, I like to have a holding area for work that's coming up. I like to call that the input queue or something like that. So I'm going to draw a cell for my input queue first. I'm going to make it kind of tall so it can fit lots of stories. And all I did there was clicked and dragged in the grid, and it made this cell for me. I'm going to set some properties for it. You'll notice here it says story style. That's kind of one of the artifacts of this being an alpha build. We're renaming stories to cards for Kanban projects. That way you can have them represent user stories or features or bugs or anything like that. So just anywhere you see story in this video, just think card. I'm going to select the list style because it allows me to show a lot of cards in one big cell. I'm going to leave all the other defaults and just go ahead and save that. Now I'm going to go ahead and create 2 lanes for work to go through. The first one is going to be for my new features, and like I said, I want 3 cells for that. So I'm going to make a cell for doing, and I like blue for that. And if you're from the Kanban world, you're probably familiar with WIP limits or work in progress limits. So I'm just going to go ahead and set a WIP limit for this cell. I'm going to make 2 more cells. And for done, I like green. Now I'm also going to want a header across all of those cells. So I'm just going to draw a 1 high box over them, and that'll automatically create a header for me. And I'm going to call this the new features header. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now if I click done editing and go look at the actual board, and we can see what that'll look like. Over here you can see I have my input queue, and then on the right here I have my new features with 3 different states. If I added a card to one of these, you can see that it's there, and I can drag it, and I can drag it back and forth between the columns. I mentioned that this input queue was the list view, so you can see it's a really small card size, so that I can fit a whole bunch in the single column. I'm going to go back into the editing board mode, and I'm going to go ahead and create the bug fixes lane. So I'm going to go ahead and create one for reproducing the bug, and then one for actually fixing the bug, one for verifying it, and a done column. Along with a header over this. Now if I go back and look at my board, you see that I have those 2 lanes. I'm just trying to go a little bit quicker here so I didn't set colors or anything. But you'll notice the bug fixes and the new features headers, they don't have any WIP limits associated with them. But I could go ahead and set that up. And you do that by selecting the header, and then saying select cells. So I'm going to click that button, and then I'm going to select the cells that it should be related to. And this lets you relate it to either a subset of the cells or all of them, or maybe not even geographically adjacent to each other. And then I'm going to say that has a WIP limit of, say, 5. So what that means is when there are 5 cards in any of these 3 cells, the WIP limit for this header will have been reached, and it will show that right on the screen for you. If after your initial drawing you've decided that any of your cells or headers aren't in the right place or the right size, you can always just click on them and drag them around and resize them and whatnot. Besides cells, the second thing that you might want to set up on your board are workflows. So what is a workflow? It defines a series of steps that a piece of work goes through. So here I clearly have 2 different workflows. I have the new feature one that goes across the top, and then the bug fixing one which goes across the bottom. Now you might ask why we have to go and set up workflows manually. Well, that's because by doing it this way, we can separate the kind of conceptual workflow that your work goes through from the visual display on the board. So we can do a lot of really complex things, and where that comes into play is when we're reporting on this stuff. So let me just show you kind of a couple examples. So by default, you get a workflow that just has all of the different cells in it. This one is, nice for seeing a CFD that's just kind of everything all at once with no summarization or anything. But I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new workflow that is just for the new feature work. And I have 3 cells in my new feature work, so I want to create 3 steps in my my workflow here. And then I'm going to associate cells with each of these steps. So for this first one, I'm going to pick this first cell. And when you have an initial step and you pick a single cell, it automatically fills in the color and the name for you, so you don't have to worry about any of that. The second step, and then the third step. And what this will let me do is that over in our reporting module, I'll be able to select the new features workflow, and I'll be able to see a CFD that has just these 3 cells on it. I'll also be able to look at the lead time analysis for just this workflow and how it breaks out. I'm going to create one more workflow for the bug fixing, and I'm going to do a similar thing there with the 4 steps. And that's all well and good. Clearly I would want to report on those 2 different lanes. But I'm going to go ahead and create one more workflow, and this is going to be my kind of overall workflow. And what I'm going to do here is combine the work for both bug fixing and new features. And since these 2 lanes have a different number of cells in them, I'm going to do a little bit of massaging to make the report come out the way that makes the most sense to me. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new workflow. I'm going to call it features and bugs, so that I can find it in my reports later. And I'm just going to do 3 steps here. And for the first step, I'm going to call this the doing step. And the second step, I'm going to call it the reviewing step. And the last one, I'm going to call the done. I'm going to go ahead and set some colors and save those. Now, when I select the cells for doing, for new features, I just want this to be this one cell. But for when I'm in the bug fixing, I want to count both the reproducing and the doing cells as being part of that. So what this will do is we'll combine these 2 cells in the report, or rather combine all 3 of these cells in the report into one band on my CFD. For reviewing, it's going to be 1 cell on both of them. And then for done, it's also going to be 1 cell on both of them. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and kind of just simulate a bunch of activity, and I'll give you a real quick view of what those reports look like. So like I said, I've just gone and simulated a whole bunch of activity in this project. Here I'm looking at the cumulative flow diagram. It's for the default workflow, so this one has just all the different cells shown in each their own band. And this is interesting to look at, but it's probably not that informative. If I go down and look at just the new features, refresh my report, I can see how the CFD looks for just the new features. And here I could see that there was a pretty constant amount in reviewing, the doing was going up and down, and we were continuously getting things done. I can go look at just the bug fixing, and I can see all the work that was done in here. I can also look at the features and the bugs all combined. And if you remember, we defined this workflow just to have these three main statuses, and the cells are getting combined based on that mapping that we made, so that I can see stuff that was in the doing versus reviewing versus done, and this is overall for features and bugs. This is also really useful if you have different lanes for different teams, especially if they have the same workflow, so that you could see how the project overall is doing versus individual teams. You could have your development versus your ops groups, and kind of combine work different ways there. And I'll report on it in very intelligent ways. That's it for the demo today. Just wanted to show a quick view. A lot of this stuff will be polished and refined in the upcoming month or so. We're actually accepting some beta applications. There'll be a comment down below for where you can sign up for that. Thanks for watching.